Good morning, everybody. I flew here from Vancouver yesterday and had a great flight, slept 8 hours, so this presentation is going to go really well. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. I'm excited to see everybody here. The big news is in November, we're going to be launching a brand new version of Firefox. This is the biggest set of changes we've ever made to the browser. It's faster, it's more beautiful, it's just more awesome than any browser we've ever made. And this is actually my first stop on what's going to be a worldwide tour to introduce Firefox to some of our favorite web developer audiences around the world. So I'm really honored to be here in Taipei, and it's especially fun for me because we have a great office here, and a lot of the work you're going to see today was actually done right here in Taipei. So what about browsers? Why do we make them? Why are they exciting? I've been working on web technology now for 23 years professionally. Why do I keep doing it? It's because they're a lot of fun. And to explain that to you, I'm going to go back in time a little bit. Back to, hopefully, 1997. So the first time I worked on a browser was not actually for Mozilla. I was a contractor at Apple in the OS X days and worked on device drivers. My glamorous job was to make sure the printer drivers for really old Apple printers were going to work in Mac OS X. And to do that job, I actually snuck a browser engine into the UI for generating the printer preference panel. Not many people know this, but there's a reason the system control pane for printers looks the way it does in OS X today. It's because I cheated to build the UI, and I actually snuck SpiderMonkey, our JavaScript engine, and a little KHTML widget into Mac OS X so that I could write the solution once, because at Apple, believe it or not, you weren't allowed to actually use the real operating system when you were developing the apps for it because it was a secret. But 1997 is up on the screen, so I might be good to go here. So the web, it's been letting me build things for quite a long time, and even when the web doesn't exist, I like to just put it there anyways, which coincidentally was 2 years after this date when I worked on OS X. So 1997, why 1997? To remind you, 1997 was quite some time ago. I'm told, well, actually, I recognize this band, but I forgot it was called Mayday, which is a great name, I have to say. At least for an English speaker, it's a fantastic band name. So their first album was released in 1997, right? A while ago. We've also got, uh-oh, I might have killed the slides again. The next slide is going to be showing you that 1997 was also the year that the first Harry Potter book was released, and the year the movie The Titanic was released. Really big cultural moments, a great, Beatles-style band, famous book. It was a pretty good time. It was also the year that, in my opinion, web browsers were starting to become accepted and normal, and you were seeing a lot more websites created. And if I could, I would show you an image of the Mosaic browser from 1997. And in 1997, Mosaic was actually already 4 years old. It was made in 1993. But by 97, I think you started to see the form of the modern web browser emerge. Let's see if we can get another slide going. The punchline to this whole story, by the way, is browsers are really old. And the code we actually work on is older than many expect or think about. A lot of the code in Firefox goes back almost 20 years. And here we are. So we got Harry Potter and the Titanic. see if we can, it works. Everybody clap, yay. And here's Mosaic. So reminder, 1997, it was already 4 years old. So this was actually towards the end of the Mosaic lifespan. Netscape was already being worked on at this point and was out in the market. But this established many things about what a browser should be and how it should load documents. A good reminder that 97 was either a very long time ago or not very long at all, depending on your point of view. And web pages were pretty simple then. Naturally, when something starts to be successful, Microsoft just copies it. So unsurprisingly, this is Internet Explorer 1.0. It's a near identical copy of Mosaic, except we've got some icons on the top. And this is kind of a pattern I'm going to try to prove to you repeats. An innovator pushes the browser forward, it gets copied, and it gets deployed really widely, and more people get to use the web. Another example, let's jump forward just a few years, but this is early internet days, so a lot changes in just a few years, in the late 90s. For one thing, Jay Cheer releases his second album, Fantasy. It's a big hit, top of the billboards. The very first Need for Speed movie came out in 2001. And hard to believe, this surprised me, but it's true, Wikipedia didn't actually launch until 2001. So almost a decade after the original Mosaic browser is when Wikipedia showed up. So lots of stuff happened. What was going on in browsers? Well, this is just for me. My favorite movie of all time was also released in 2001, Spirited Away. Best movie ever. I watch it once per week. No, I don't. But here we start to see really the definition of what we think of as a web browser. Netscape was already up to version 4.78. We started to get the familiar elements. The back buttons, the forward buttons are prominent. There's a toolbar, there's an address bar. Interestingly, there's a what's related button, which is fascinating for many reasons. You can customize it, there's bookmarks now. And you also, the bottom you can't see super well, but there's an email program, a contacts program, a Microsoft Word competitor. It's all sitting here in this browser. Netscape was really trying to be the everything, right? Essentially be everything that you could ever need in one product. It set the form for what users were going to expect. By 2001, the web was exploding. Tens of millions of people were using Netscape. And so what happened? Well, Microsoft copied it. This is an early version of IE. If you go back for dramatic effect. Right? It's an almost perfect copy. But good news, millions and millions of more people can now experience the web, right? It was deployed on every single Windows machine. And the form in the browser started to really take shape. One more little time travel, and then I'll get to my point. 2004, maybe the biggest year of the 3 years I'm going to mention here today. Big year for Taiwan. 2004 is the year the 101 opened. Was obviously the tallest, largest skyscraper in the world. Most number of offices, highest occupancy, largest stair sets. Impressive building in many, many ways. I'm a big fan of the Olympics, and it was a pretty amazing year. It was the first time the Olympics went back to Greece, where they were born in 2004. Feels like a really long time ago to me for some reason. And this is just random, but it worked out really good for this talk. It happened to be 2004 was the very first year a Taiwanese athlete won a gold medal at the Olympic Games, which is just kind of incredible. So, huge year for Taiwan. Also a really big year for browsers because it was the year of Firefox. So Mozilla, of course, picked up the Netscape suite and ran with it after Netscape didn't exist. So Mozilla was founded before this. We built a Netscape Navigator suite. But this was the year when we redefined what a browser was going to be. It was streamlined. It didn't have all the other stuff in it. There's no email program. There's no Composer. There's no Usenet browser. Remember Usenet News? Really cool. You started to have dedicated treatment for search because people were doing a lot of searches online. You had a lot less user interface visible. And Firefox 1.0 really was the time when a lot of changes were able to happen in the web's implementation. So the engine, in our case, Gecko, inside Firefox. Whole new classes of things became possible for web developers. And really, Firefox 1.0 became the reference standard browser that all browsers afterwards would be inspired by. So, what happened? I think you know the answer, right? Copy, paste, and repeat. Internet Explorer 7. Look at that. It's a lot thinner on the top. The navigation buttons are highlighted. There's a search bar. Amazingly enough, Microsoft thought they had won with Internet Explorer 6, and they were never going to have to work on web browsers ever again. So it took them 6 years to go from Internet Explorer 6 to Internet Explorer 7. I would claim if we hadn't done Firefox 1.0, we never would have saw improvements in Internet Explorer and arguably any other browser ever again. Right after this, Microsoft wasn't the only game in town and realized you had to have an amazing browser or people weren't going to use your computer. Here's Safari 3, which I found an old screenshot for. It's interesting for a bunch of reasons. So they're Apple, way more innovative. The tabs are on the bottom instead of the top. That was Apple's user interface contribution. And it looks like brushed metal instead of the native thing. Otherwise, it's basically identical to the Firefox 1.0 form. Notice, this is what I found really interesting, relevant for today's topics. Apple used the performance of Safari as a major selling feature. And I remember, Firefox being completely beaten in the market by Safari. It was way faster. It was over twice as fast as any browser that came before it. That really set the recipe for then the next browser that would kind of rule the browser world for about 8 years, Chrome. So this is 4 years after Firefox 1.0. It's 2008 now. Chrome comes out. It takes the fast engine from Safari, takes the slick tabbed user interface from Firefox, and about a $3 billion marketing campaign later, and you've got the most popular browser in the world. And in most places in the world, Chrome has been the most popular browser for around 7 years. Not a coincidence that I pointed out it usually takes 6 to 7 years before another browser comes and leapfrogs the previous browsers. Which brings me to what I'm here to really talk about, building the best browser in the world. And we take that job pretty seriously at Firefox. It's what we get up in the morning to do. Best browser. I don't need the other slide. I can talk to this one. It's really kind of how we think about the world as building this super suit, which you've seen before. Oh, that one's gone. I don't need it. And a lot of stuff goes into it. And the interesting pattern I'm hoping you're seeing through my little walk through history is that when browser makers get competitive and try to make a substantially better browser for end users, right? And the end users don't pick browsers based on engine features, right? They don't know that there's a really great CSS grid implementation in Firefox, or service workers are really amazing in Chrome. End users pick browsers because it lets them have amazing experiences on websites. So end users make their choice based on the product, the application, not on the technology inside. What that means as a browser maker is we have to spend a lot of energy to make a fantastic browser, but when we do, right, when we do better than Netscape or Internet Explorer, or Chrome does better than Safari, or Safari does better than us, what happens is the web gets much better for everybody, and in particular, the web gets much better for developers. Because with performance, you get capability. When you can do things faster, you can do more. It means applications can get richer. It means interaction paradigms can get smoother. means users can do more with the product. And so for the rest of the day, we're going to spend a lot of time with the people responsible for some of the new technologies in Firefox, but I'm just going to give you a little tour so you can pick which tracks you might want to go to later this afternoon. So there's two big things that are new in Firefox that I'm going to talk about. One is essentially, let's just call it a whole new engine. It's a reworking of the engine inside Firefox, which is called Gecko. It's called Project Quantum. I dug up a really old slide. This slide's from a year and a half ago. When we started the Quantum project, there's a few big pieces that do a lot of work inside the rendering engine of Firefox. Quantum overhauls almost all of them. I'm going to look at two features here, just because I think they tell different parts of the story of how a web browser gets faster and how a browser gets better. The first project is called Quantum Flow. Flow is a perfect example of most of performance games in old established code, like browsers, doesn't come from a single new feature. It comes from engineers sitting in a profiler and just looking for every single spot where we could make the browser a millisecond faster. And so Flow is the story of bugs, many, many performance bugs that a team of over 1,000 people have contributed to. Everything from scroll bar performance to exactly how much work we do on startup, to how much the main thread blocks in sync, our IPC mechanisms for moving data around inside the browser. How many bugs? Hundreds and hundreds of bugs. This is just this last year. These are all the priority 1 and priority 0. Ignore the priority 2, 3, and 4 bugs that are opened in Firefox, just around performance. So anywhere we thought there was something that could get faster, we open a bug, we profile it, we fix it. Amazingly enough, for this release in November, we will have closed all of our priority 0 and priority 1 performance bugs. And it's probably the single biggest thing that's making the new Firefox so much faster. It's a really great piece of work. And it's easy to forget that sometimes the big wins don't come from working on the shiny new feature. They come from just the hard engineering work of trying to save a millisecond off of a critical piece of code, right? Here's some of the results. The top line is the speedometer benchmark, which I think Apple mostly made, but it's supposed to represent real-world JavaScript frameworks used today. How fast do they execute? And you can see here, we've made pretty substantial gains in just 1 year. And in fact, with the developer edition we shipped yesterday, I think, is when we branched, we're actually 28% faster than Chrome on the most important benchmark that there is, speedometer. So not only have we caught them, we've passed them, and we've got some substantial work in 58 and 59 versions to keep extending that lead. The next one is really an intro into the next topic, which is Quantum CSS. And this is just a graph that shows a recent big memory game we made. One of the things we really focused on with Firefox was not just being fast on $3,000 Apple computers, but being really fast on $300 Asus computers, because we know that's where most people actually sit, is on a $300 to $500 computer. It maybe has 2 gigabytes of RAM in it. It's not an 8 gigabyte monster Macintosh, is not what's actually sitting on most end users' tables or laps. So why is this one important? I picked this project to highlight. There's going to be much more on this later. Because for me, it represents kind of the future of Firefox. We know CSS has gotten more complicated. You can do amazing layout right now. CSS grid is like the first thing that I can personally actually deal with without wanting to go crazy from complex CSS styling. So we know the browser does a lot of work on CSS. Quantum CSS does a bunch of cool stuff. How it got into Firefox is kind of interesting. It started as a component in our Servo engine. And Servo is an experimental browser engine that doesn't ship in Firefox. We do research with Servo. And Servo is written in Rust, a new systems programming language Mozilla helped create going back 8 or 9 years ago. And so in some ways, seeing Quantum CSS, this brand new parallelized high-performance style sheet engine, be written in a brand new language, evolve and have the techniques proven in an experimental rendering engine, Servo, make it into Firefox and ship to a few 100 million people and actually render the whole web, has been almost a decade in the making, right? It took 10 years for us to do this work, and so we're pretty excited to now we can actually do it. And if you work on Firefox today, all of the tools you need to write code in Rust are present in the Firefox build system. It's really the future of how new features and big overhauls in the browser are going to be done. Those are the two big things. One, open bugs, sit in the profiler, close the bugs. Number two, implement the future, know that it's going to take 6 or 8 or 10 years, have a game plan, and now we're starting to see those advances show up in Firefox. Two very different style of projects that fit within the Quantum effort, and they're both really important reasons for why Firefox is going to be so much better in November. The other big one, and again, more details on Photon later, but I'll give you my take on Photon. So if we're going to do a lot of work to make the engine of the browser way, way faster, we want users to feel it. And Photon is a complete visual refresh of the browser designed to have it feel modern and fresh, but also have it feel really fast to an end user, right? And so even if we lay out a page, you load a complex web page and it happens really, really fast, users aren't going to really feel that unless the interface that they're interacting with is very responsive and very fluid, right? And the state of the art is always advancing here. So this is the whole biggest change we've clearly ever done to Firefox. It's a whole new user interface. It looks fantastic, and it's designed to take advantage of the performance improvements in the engine. So, rounded tabs are gone. Everything is designed to be rendered and animated very smoothly. It was about 5 years in the making. I think it looks fantastic. A few examples of things we've done. These are things we should have done long ago, but only got around to doing it now. Finally, the menu system makes sense. You can find things in the menus. Users can locate options really quickly. It's easy to customize. We finally collected all of the user interface elements around your stuff. So this is your collections of things and a single icon called the library. So you can get to your bookmarks, you can get to your history, downloads, the screenshots you've taken, your collections of things. They're in one place, and that makes it easy then for us to add more collections into this one user interface element without filling the menu bar with tons and tons of icons, which nobody likes, turns out. Another example from Photon is now everything about interacting with a given page, the page that's on the screen in Firefox, is under one menu item. So if you want to bookmark that page, you want to screenshot that page, you want to save it to your pocket, you go to one place to do it. Again, should have always been this way, but back in Firefox 1.0, we didn't think there'd be so many ways of interacting with web pages, so we didn't design the user interface to make it easy. But now it's really easy, and users love it. It's predictable. Once you learn where to go once, you know where to go for everything else. Works really great. One thing I'm going to highlight that you can do in Firefox that you can't do in Chrome or any other browser is you can make sidebars really easily. And sidebars are kind of first-party experiences in Firefox. We have APIs to have web developers with web extensions control them. And we've got context switching capability built in so that once the browser's doing things, sidebars can be displayed or undisplayed to fit the situation. So we're big fans of sidebars, and we finally have great APIs now for you folks to build sidebar experiences that help browser users get between pages or see their bookmarks or whatever. And everybody loves our critters. Firefox is really not a corporate giant. We're a bunch of people who love browsers. It's all we do, right? We don't make a browser because we need to defend a platform, or we don't make a browser because there has to be an icon on the Android home screen. Everybody else that makes a browser isn't a browser company. we're the only browser company. And so we love browsers, and we want users to know that we find them really fun and exciting. And so all of our things like error screens have been updated with some new critters, some fun new language. When you do new user onboarding, we have a little graphic trying to help you understand, in this case, what the library is about. We're letting kind of our attitude and the fact that we have a lot of fun making this browser show through in the product. The selfish reason for us, of course, is that people pick that energy up and they love the product even more. And people love these critters, and sometimes maybe, I don't know, maybe we go too far with the critters, but people do love the little Firefox characters, and there's a whole family of them now, and they're a lot of fun to draw, and it's a lot of fun for users to come across this kind of humorous little critters to explain complicated browser features to them. One of my favorite parts of the new Firefox, believe it or not. So that's kind of where we are right now. This is the released yesterday Firefox Developer Edition, which is based on the same code branch that will go to all Firefox users in November, right? We're pretty proud of it. We're pretty proud of the work the teams have done. The browser is almost 3 times as fast on almost any kind of measurement that you can dream up compared to a year ago. In most measurements, it's as fast or faster than any other browser on Earth. And really what we're going for is we want to be the best browser, period. And this release of Firefox in November is really our big statement on this is the best browser, end of story. The dev tools are pretty sweet too. You guys might be interested. The new syntax highlighting colors are fantastic. And so my ask, which you're going to hear over and over today, is if you haven't already, go and download this browser. So for normal users, they're going to see Firefox on November 14th. Firefox 57 is the release date. That's when the main release of Firefox will get all of the new features, the new code. But you can just download Firefox Nightly today and get it, or you can download Firefox Developer Edition today, and once it updates itself, which it'll do on first launch, you'll get to experience all of the stuff, the new engine, the new menus, the new UI, the new performance. It's all there. So if you haven't done it yet, download one of these, either Developer Edition or Nightly, give it a shot, and let us know how it works for you. There's still time to fix bugs. We've got a few weeks, so it's a good time to grab it. One last ask before I give up the stage to the people who actually made all of this stuff. Once you download the new Nightly, why don't you make a web extension? So being able to customize Firefox has been a big part of its story since the very beginning. And starting with this release in November, the only way you're going to be able to customize Firefox is with a new set of APIs that we call web extensions. And the exciting thing here is if you wanted to make Firefox do something special before, you had to learn a whole bunch of crazy Firefox stuff. How the engine worked. We have weird technology called Zool, which is kind of like HTML, CSS, but kind of not. And you had to learn a bunch of stuff that was special to Firefox. Now you can just use JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and you can customize lots of things in Firefox. And the amazing thing is if you write extensions for Chrome right now, there's a pretty good chance they'll just run in Firefox. So you don't have to build a special customization just for the Firefox browser anymore. Web extensions will work on Chrome, they'll work on Safari, mostly, they'll work on Edge, they'll work on Firefox, and we'll support everything that Chrome supports, plus a lot of fun other stuff like sidebars, things like that. So you can do more with the Firefox web extensions than any other browser. So that's it. That's a completed Firefox. It's how we think of the browser as browser makers. We build the supersuit that users wear when they go on the web. It's got to give them safety, right? It's got to protect them. It's got to let them go really fast. It's got to let them have a ton of fun browsing the web. The new version of Firefox, out in November, but you guys can try it now, is really, we think, our best supersuit we've ever made for browser users, and we're pretty proud of it. So try it out. Let us know what you think, and I'll be out front, but so will all the other Firefox folks, and you can give us feedback. And we don't stop here. This is really just the first stop on a whole brand new Firefox browser product. So enjoy the day, and I hope you'll learn lots about browsers. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.